And the Polynesian islands are actually the crucible of mankind. It's the kind of genesis point of modern civilization. It's where you have the genesis point of, say, for example, the Maori people of New Zealand. It's the place where we get the ancient cultures that were building the megalithic sites like we see on Easter Island. And the French government have exploded 200 nuclear devices in Polynesia. People have been dropping like flies from thyroid cancer, birth defects, and other health complications. It's still going on to this day. It's completely hushed up, and the French government have even vaporized entire islands with nuclear devices. And that book is called Poisoned Rain. So by reading The Nuclear Barons and reading Poisoned Rain, you really see the true character of these people who are behind the nuclear industry. And I completely agree with everything that Max has said. However, my research has led me to believe that these aristocrats, these dukes, barons, earls, kings, queens, these people do not consider themselves to be part of the human race. They believe that they've been born with the divine right to rule. And I do not equate myself with these aristocratic type people, and vis-a-vis, they do not equate themselves with me or any other member of the human race. The situation which we have now is not really something to do with how we as the people have voted in certain governments who are now building these very, very dangerous plants. It's more accurate to say that there is no democracy. There is just the facade of democracy, and most countries live in a democratic dictatorship. That means that, yes, we have candidates, we have elections, but the outcome of those elections is massaged and manipulated by the media, and it's the choice of the candidate, which happens in secret, which very much decides the outcome of the elections. Once we put our cross on that voting card, by the way, a cross is the mark of an illiterate person who can't read or write. Once we put our cross on the voting card, put it in the ballot box gets taken away, and those cards are meant to be counted by people. We don't scrutinize that system enough as people, and then we sit back and we wait to watch the media, which is owned by a very, very narrow, tiny number of people. Thousands of newspapers and magazines and television channels are in the hands of just 3 or 4 companies. The 2 leading media moguls are Rupert Murdoch and Silvio Berlusconi. And we sit back and then they tell us, George W. Bush has won. Oh, David Cameron, who is related to the Queen and went to Eton, he's the new Prime Minister of Britain. It's all a sham, it's all a charade, and it's a very, very clever system that has been designed to control humanity, and that design has been perfected since the time of King Alfred by the British Bavarian elite. And it's the system that the Roman Empire used, it's the system of Capitol Hill, it's the system of Westminster, and it's been copied all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an oligarchy. It's what I call a functional rotational dictatorship that poses as a democracy. It provides people with the illusion of choice every year, but they really don't have any. And I think now people are waking up to this, and it's now time for people to start realizing what this system actually is. It's simply a meme. It doesn't exist. It's just an energetic life form that people believe exists because we're taught that it exists. But what actually exists is us, is people, is the world that we live on. If we start building community amongst ourselves and standing up as communities and simply saying enough is enough, where, if we're going to have government at all, we want it to be honest government. We need to start doing this at a grassroots level. All of the things I'm seeing in films and suggestions by people of rooftop gardens and cob housing and all these alternate things, this is all very well, but we need to stand together as communities in order to implement any of these ideas. Because if you go and buy some land and attempt to build a cob house, you'll find that there's some local council or building regulation that will prevent you from doing so. So we need to have communities that will simply implement this plan. We don't have to write out like a petition to go and petition the government and suggest that we go this way. We simply need to go this way and tell the government, so that's what we're doing now. We tried it your way, it doesn't work. Look at the state of the world. Your system doesn't work. Exhibit A, the Earth. There it is. Have a look at it. That's your problem. We intend to fix that now. We need to realise that we've got the power to do this. And the people that you talk about, these elitist families who believe they have the divine right to rule, these are simply psychopathic personalities, psychopathic bloodlines. And that's what psychopaths do. And the reason that any monarchy has a divine right to rule anyway is simply because they've claimed it, because no one else has claimed theirs. People need to realise that there is nothing between you and whatever you perceive God to be. Whatever you perceive the Creator to be, you can also claim your divine right to rule yourself. You can write yourself out a preeminent trust, establish a corporation soul so you can interact with the straw man reality that they create through your corporation soul, and establish your divine right to rule yourself. Get a little wax stamp and stamp it the way the Queen does. That's all it is. That's your religious freedom to claim your divine right. We just haven't done it. Actually, to do that, it's called the quick oath. The quick oath, it's called. When you write out a preeminent trust and establish a corporate soul, it's called the quick oath. And very interestingly, in the Fire of London, which was in 1666, when they established the Cester KV Act, which virtually brought about the straw man reality that we all deal with, this registered person that we carry around, the straw man, who is essentially a dead entity. When you perform the quick oath, then you become free of that dead entity. And there was always the saying that it's either the quick or the dead. So you need to choose to be quick rather than dead.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree.
Well,
shall I? Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No.
Shall I just talk a little bit about Chernobyl? And that happened in 1986. Shall I just discuss that? Because it has great implications to what we see going on today with Fukushima.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I
mean, I completely agree that we can learn about our future by studying our past.
Okay, well, 1986, we have 4 nuclear reactors in a place called Chernobyl, which is in the Ukraine, and the Ukraine is an independent country. Now, at the time, in 1986, it was part of the Soviet bloc, so it was in the Soviet groupings with Romania and Hungary and Czechoslovakia and Russia itself. Now, in 1986, they decide to do a test, a safety test, which is deliberately closing down the primary cooling circuit on one of the 4 reactors to see whether the emergency cooling system would be triggered. The situation got out of hand because what happened is that the core got much hotter, much faster than they anticipated. A bubble of hydrogen all of a sudden developed inside the steel and concrete containment vessel. This is very, very serious because hydrogen is highly inflammable. If anybody has seen the old black and white footage of the hot air balloon igniting and going up in flames, the old Zeppelins, hydrogen, just the tiniest spark, and you're going to have an explosion. And that's what happened at Chernobyl. Chernobyl was not really an accident that happened, oh dear, all of a sudden it exploded. It is the result of a test procedure which went critically wrong. Now, the roof of the building was specifically designed to contain any kind of nuclear explosion. The roof weighed 1,000 metric tons and was made from solid steel and concrete. What happened is that 1,000-ton roof blew off like somebody flipping a pancake in a frying pan. It flew up into the air, the hydrogen ignited, and the roof flipped over and fell back down onto the actual core and smashed it to smithereens. What then happened is that the core, which was just getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and was no longer getting cooled by any cooling fluid, got so hot that it melted itself through the floor of the reactor building. And it kept melting floors, floor after floor after floor. And this is what you call the China syndrome. Now, that is a term which is used in the nuclear industry to describe this phenomenon. The reason it's called the China syndrome is because, in theory, the core would just continue getting so hot that it would keep melting its way through the Earth's crust and would eventually come out on the other side of the planet in China. The reality is different. Everywhere in the Earth's crust, you have water moisture in the soil, and you even have underground rivers, and that's called the water table. The reality of the China syndrome is that once you go down 50, 60, 70 feet, maybe 150 feet, it depends on the geological makeup. Once the core meets groundwater, it's going to explode because water is made of hydrogen and oxygen. Thank our lucky stars that that did not happen. The Russians were very, very clever. What they did is that they didn't use water to actually cool this melting core. They dumped tons and tons of sand onto the core with granules of boron. Now, boron soaks up the actual free neutrons. Now, as the sand was put onto the core, it melted, and it melted into glass. And it made this kind of globby, kind of huge kind of mass. And that gradually stuck itself to the stairs, the balustrades, the concrete, the steel in the building, and it slowed the core down. It became thicker and thicker and thicker, and eventually it came to rest rather like a giant jello which has fallen out of the jello mold and has just set. In that process, the core, as it was making contact with the steel of the stairs, the steel of the balustrades, and the actual building materials, constantly transmuted itself from one element to another, and it created actually a completely new element, which is now called Chernobylite. And it's an unofficial man-made element which is not listed on the elementary tables which we see in our schools.